unlocking your world of creativity with best-selling author and brand innovator, Mark Stinson. This episode is brought to you by White Cloud Coffee Roasters, nestled in the heart of Idaho's mountain wilderness, where every bean tells a story of adventure. Discover the difference in their premium beans, meticulously roasted to capture the essence of the mountains. Now, listeners of our podcast can get an exclusive 10% discount. Just use the promo code CREATIVITY at checkout. Visit whitecloudcoffee.com and use the code CREATIVITY.
Welcome back, friends, to our podcast, Your World of Creativity, where we travel around the globe talking to creative practitioners everywhere about how they get inspired and how they organize ideas, and most of all, how we gain the confidence and the connections to launch our work out into the world. And we're thrilled to stamp our creative passports in Miami today to talk to Gui Jaroschy. Gui, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Gui is a renowned mixologist and co-founder of a company called Unfiltered Hospitality. So we're going to talk about all things hospitality and mixology. It's not just a fancy word for bartender, Gui.
Not always. It can be, but not always.
Oh, so good. Well, Gui, from being named one of Food and Wine Magazine's 10 best new mixologists, and you're leading global beverage innovation all over the place, really a force in transforming the beverage industry. What are you seeing as those forces of change in your industry?
I think there are several, but essentially people love a good occasion to get together and enjoy themselves. And I think that the general bar, so to speak, has been raised across the world on what people can expect from a drink at those occasions. And I think it's become both a mark of competition, but also collaboration across the industry to give people better experiences in beverage and in hospitality in general. And so we're one piece helping operators and owners kind of stake their claim in that.
Yes. And when you think about recognition, you've earned James Beard Award nominations, spot on 50 best bars type lists. What are the, I guess I'll say, hallmarks of the great work that you're seeing across the industry?
I think most generally, or at least how I've always looked at it in my own career and how I help our clients to look at it, it's really about sharing something that's special to themselves or special to the place. And I think when you start with something that you're excited about, that you're passionate about, and that you truly love, and you're able to communicate that and give that to someone else, that is in its essence, that is the essence of hospitality, but the industry is built around and when it's at its best. And I think that bars around the world and bars that have success, and at times when I've been the most successful in my career, are just really times when I'm excited about something and excited to share it with other people.
Hmm. And so many people in hospitality, you can focus on the taste, you can focus on the dish if it's in a restaurant, but the experience, people want to walk away and say, that was unbelievable.
Exactly. And I think you see that when you look at a list like 50 Best Bars, or when you look at a list of James Beard Award winners, it's not entirely molecular, futuristic, crazy shows of smoke and mirrors. Now, there are some. We saw Paradiso in Barcelona win World's Best Bar, and it is very much a show atmosphere of that kind of Spanish style. But you've also seen bars like Dante, which is a neighborhood Italian sidewalk cafe in the West Village. Again, I think it's about sharing something that really comes across to people and really kind of gives them that wow experience. And whether it's a bar like Dante or a bar like Paradiso, I think at its core, you have a team that's really engaged and really excited to continue to develop things around this concept and share it with people.
And when we talk about creativity in mixology, in addition to your own feature in some of these 10 best lists, your own groundbreaking concepts, I read about Broken Shaker. Where does creativity come into the mix, whether it's crafting a cocktail or creating these experiences?
It's interesting because it's a balance in what we do, because we are making creative consumer goods at the end of the day. And so I think there's a level of creativity that you have to embrace. And I look for inspiration in travel. I look for inspiration from chefs and cuisine and the world of food, especially even pastry. I find that overlays nicely over the bar just because they're using a lot of those similar ingredients. And at the end of the day, we're generally balancing a sort of sweetness, acidity, and bitterness in just about every cocktail, and booziness, of course.
Hmm.
But at any rate, I think that you really do need to make time for the creative process to understand what it is that you're trying to get across to people and what is the feeling that you want them to have when drinking the drink. So that can be in terms of atmosphere and the kind of scene that you're setting, but then it can be individually in a drink. So like at Broken Shaker, as an example, since you mentioned it, our kind of rules for cocktail creation, and we originally opened changing the entire menu every 2 weeks, and then it stretched to 3 weeks, and then it stretched to a month. But to undertake changing the entire menu every few weeks, you really have to get the team involved. And we set the ground rules of it's either tied to a very strong sort of childhood or otherwise memory. It really connects with a sense of place or setting, or it's just really good. So those classic twists that you're making, it needs to be a real improvement, but still be recognizable as a classic. Or a cocktail, which unfortunately I did not create, but that's always been a part of those Broken Shaker menus, was the Cocoa Puff Old Fashioned. And that was one created by one of the founders, Elad. Just walking through on Miami Beach, you have these um, Caribbean style bodegas that they're the size of a large gas station, but they have everything of a large grocery store,
Right,
just
right.
one of each down all the aisles. And we would just walk that store looking for ingredients and products that kind of just struck a chord or memory and say, how can we incorporate that into a drink? So anyway, he did a Cocoa Puff infused bourbon with a chocolate and orange bitter. It's really simple, but people, every time you serve them that drink, there was just an aha moment of, oh, wow,
Hmm.
it has all the features of that sort of chocolatey milk after a bowl of cereal, but on the other end, all the features and feel of an old fashioned. And it really just resonated with people.
And what's wrong with an old fashioned for breakfast?
Yeah, not much as far as I can tell.
I love that. When you're talking about drawing inspiration from all these other sort of hospitality categories, whether it's restaurants or hotels, all these other things. You and I were talking ever so briefly about coffee shops. Think about involving the team, involving the customer, trying to create these memories in our own coffee shop. Where are I see so many of these coffee laden, drinks and also then alcohol infused coffees. You can see the overlap almost every day, can't you?
Of course, yeah, 100%. And at the end of the day, they're both really like community meeting spots. The coffee shop more of the daytime and generally out by 5. And then the
Mhm.
bar takes its place after that 5 o'clock time period as a community meetup spot where people can unwind and relax for the end of the day, whereas they might be ramping up to go into the day or getting some work done or meeting with a friend to catch up. I've always been drawn to coffee shops for the same reason I was drawn to bars, just in they're such a great place to set a scene and invite people to meet up and unwind.
And different cities seem to have inspiration and culture. You were born and raised in Austin, for example. You think about the culture there and the creativity, all the other places you travel. What sort of places and cities and culture do you find are also inspiring you these days?
Definitely a range. I think one of the most all-time inspiring cities or places I've ever been was Tel Aviv. I went there for a bar pop-up series and got to stroll the Levinsky Market and just places in general, and the food culture there and the history and everything. The people were really amazing and inspiring, and I've taken that with me a bit. I take it from a whole range of places, and that's what's interesting now about being a consultant, is that we don't just work with one sort of brand and concept that we've been developing over time. We're working with all different types. So we had a client in Pensacola, Florida, which for many people, I don't think would be considered the height of culinary inspiration. But Pensacola reminded me so much of my favorite part of the Texas beach towns that I grew up going to, with a little bit of kind of New Orleans flair. It's right there on the border of Alabama and the Gulf Coast. And so it actually became, and you can still walk into a bar that's packed that has 150 silly named shots on a board and people trying to drink their way through all of them. And while it might not be the most popular thing in mixology these days, there's elements of that people at the end of the day just want to have a really good time and have fun. And you can bring that into the right concept and say, hey, this is really fun. And we can maybe elevate it or tweak it, but it's inspiring nonetheless.
Let's continue to look behind the curtain and under the hood of that consultancy. You're the co founder of Unfiltered Hospitality. What really inspired you to start that kind of adventure?
It's funny, I call myself the industry or bar stepdad at this point. I was very much, and what that means is people don't necessarily call me when the roof is on fire. We have the call the next day to figure out what we're going to do to move forward and step into it. And after so many years in the industry, it's nice to be looked at as someone who people can lean into for solutions, for help, but not, again, necessarily be the person there in slippers on the
Yes.
night of every night. But beyond that, and in all seriousness, I think my career to this point has been defined by education and enjoyment of developing people around me and the teams that I worked with. And I get a chance to do that at a large scale with a team of people that I love working with. So my partner Ben and I worked together in bars in 2014, 15, had taken on some consulting projects, and he opened his own bar and restaurant, and some time passed. And then during COVID, we were asked if we would like to consult on a project opening here in Miami. And we were both on pause with our current jobs and said, let's do it. We had a great time doing it and realized, man, over this time, we've really developed some great tools and great systems and our own skills. And we might want to just do this moving forward. And that's what we did. So
Mhm.
we've been full time growing and developing Unfiltered Hospitality for the last 4.5 years, just about. And we've worked with a range of clients from mom and pop single unit restaurants and bars to Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies working on a range of projects. But I think it still for us always comes back to giving people tools that help them take what we develop and run with it and continue to grow and continue to emphasize training and staff engagement. Because I think the danger in consulting is you can get too caught up in the product and not realize that there are you can't my background is blurred and we're on an audio only podcast, but there's hundreds of bar books behind me and there's great recipes in all of them. But what it takes to turn that around to a guest and make it meaningful goes way beyond that.
And even if you, as you mentioned, staff engagement, I am curious when you get that phone call as consultants, we always get the SOS. Sometimes it's I have something I'm starting, but oftentimes it's I need to fix it. I need a turnaround. I need the patch. What is your approach as you come into a new project? How do you look at it? How do you scope it out?
I think we start by asking a lot of questions and pretty much always build in an on-site discovery visit because as you mentioned, I think especially with existing venues, what sometimes leaders or owners who are really dialed into it day to day, what they might feel like their biggest issue is might just be a symptom of something else. And it can be sometimes a difficult conversation to have to try and reposition without just saying, I think it's something else, but trying to get people to come around to the idea that, again, I think a lot of times people come to us saying, my cocktails aren't great. But realistically, what is needed to put out great cocktails is better training, better daily processes, and a more engaged team. And so we need to look at that, at the issues that they're coming to us with from a slightly higher view outside of the day to day and see how we could approach it in a way that would really provide a meaningful impact for their business and continue to grow moving forward.
Hmm. And do you find you'd like to think they called you, so they're open to your input, but we creative people are often very, what, protective, and our egos are often hurt when you say, "I don't think this is working," or "I think you need to make a change."
Yeah. Yes, I think you mentioned ego in there, and it
Yes,
is
uh-huh.
it's tough, especially
Especially,
when
I
we
guess,
bring
the mom and pop. Our name's on the front. We came up with this.
you're right, exactly. And again, I think we differentiate ourselves from a lot of consultants in that we are never trying to put in either a solution or a menu or anything else like that says this is unfiltered. We want it to feel like it's organic to the place in which we're working with. And I think there's a lot of consultants who say this is a blank menu. I'm known for this and this is my style and it will work here. And we always try and make it be something that feels organic to the place that we're working with. Yeah, I think it goes both ways. We have this experience sometimes where even we ourselves are coming in with cocktails or work or possible potential solutions and seeing our clients really want to have. And I think it's great when they want input, and we always do better when we get that pushback from a client to either justify or tweak or rework. As much as I think bringing on a new consultant, that can be the biggest part of the training process, is understanding that you don't get to be the trusted expert all the time. You also have to be a good listener. You have to be collaborative. You have to be willing to accept that maybe your idea isn't better than theirs, especially given how well they know the business. It really just comes down to that's, especially in regards to cocktails specifically. But it's a really fun exchange between client and consultant. And when there is that a good exchange, you always see better results.
Yes. Collaboration. And you mentioned earlier working with some of these other iconic brands. I read in your CV brands like British Airways, the Smithsonian. How did these collaborations help you expand your horizons, push some boundaries, bring some new ideas into your creativity?
Yeah. Some of those, like the British Airways one you mentioned, was a great sort of collaboration in general, but also from a perspective of understanding you have a very set and a very small number of square inches by which to make this creative cocktail that they're going to serve in the first class cabin. Just about every inch of workable space is mapped and well accounted for. And so experiences like that really help you refine your creative process, because the majority of my really the experiential development came at Broken Shaker, where we were an experiment that worked very well in a youth hostel and exploded to opening 4 locations. So we had creative lay of the land and a good say when building out the spaces as to how much storage we needed or prep space or equipment, et cetera, because it just continued to go well. But experiences like working with British Airways, or even recently we were working with Joe Stone Crab in Miami Beach, which is now in its 113th season. It was last year's highest grossing independent restaurant in the country. So they're always busy. They do 1,000 to 1,200 covers a night, Thursday through Sunday. But they have things that are also built completely different than any other bar I've ever worked. They have a service bar where the bartender themselves have limited ice and zero glassware behind the bar. So the servers basically ring their drinks and bring their ticket up with glasses filled with ice if needed, or martini glasses chilling. And the bartender has to make drinks one at a time. And my first thought is, oh, we'll bring an expo and they can take multiple servers or whatever. And then you start to see it in action and realize there's so much riding on the way that this system has been built for so long. And we've come up with some ways to make it work better. And I could go on about Joe's forever, because I think it's one of the coolest clients we've ever worked with, and one of my just favorite places to be, because the average server has worked there for about 20 years at this point. Average bartender is probably 15 to 20 years.
Yep.
But yet it's still this very family, very cool, congenial atmosphere around every night, even when they're doing 1,100 covers. But yeah, it teaches you to take a step back and look at what's actually happening there versus what you've had success with in the past, and build and come up with solutions that work for them in real time.
So good. Before we get on to other creative things, Guy, how do we connect with you and learn more about Unfiltered Hospitality?
Yeah, you can check out our website. It's www.unfilteredhospo.com. And you can also find us on Instagram at Unfiltered Hospo, and on LinkedIn, Unfiltered Hospo. It's always Unfiltered Hospo across the board.
Perfect. We'll put all those links in the show notes, listeners, so you can connect with Guy. Guy, as we think about the future, we've got a lot of aspiring innovators listening in. It's not just advice. What action do you think we need to be taking right now to be more competitive, especially in your evolving industry, but in hospitality overall?
That's a great question. It's funny, I should be thinking about that, but as I just talked about, I think about it on such a case by case basis. I think that the need to have a brand and identity is more important than ever. I think in the age of sort of Instagram and people checking you out, not through a critic review or a news story, now people are more looking at spatial tags and where people are and what does it look like and what does it feel like. Um, is it consistent? I think more than ever, people are really looking for identity to drive decisions. So the more that you can develop, and it doesn't just have to be from a visual point of view, though I do think it helps to distinguish your brand visually. From a conceptual, from a ideal or targeted guest perspective, what do you want to share with people and how do you want it to feel needs to come across more than ever in the various platforms we just mentioned and online, because people are doing so much more of their own research and they're just basing it off of the feeling they get when they see your brand and your place. So I think the more you can differentiate yourself and distinguish what you offer as distinct, the more it drives business in the modern era. And I think that will just only continue to grow.
I think that's so actionable. And I also think about I couldn't leave without asking you about the role of rewards and recognition in your business. I know all my years in the advertising business, you had to get a trophy, you had to get the blue ribbon, but there's a chicken and the egg. You got to do the great work first, don't you? Do you see the award as an outcome or as a goal?
I see it as a little bit of both. Is that acceptable? Can I say column
So
A
of
and
course
column
you
B?
can.
Yeah. I think when there are definitely some in our industry and that are very targeted with the award as the goal. But I think that the ones that get there generally see it as a little bit of both. They know, and I think sometimes we take for granted how simple it can be as an outcome. I use the example of education, as micro as it is, as having a manager or bartender select a daily spirit to just do a 5 minute pre-shift on every day, regardless of whether everyone's there or not. Just picking a spirit and letting them people know what's special about it, maybe giving them a taste if you're allowed. But ongoing daily small practices add up to a lot in the long run. And generally, these bars that are recognized and win awards, or these people or individuals, that's really what they're doing. They have a big goal, but they're doing very small kind of daily actions to get there as an outcome.
Mm, so helpful. Guy, I can't thank you enough for a great conversation. It's been such a pleasure learning from you. Your journey, your approach to mixology, the impact that you could make, and most of all, the encouragement for the rest of us to be more creative and create our brands. Thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Mark.
You bet. And listeners, don't miss our next episode. We're going to continue these round the world journeys. We've stopped off at a bar in Miami, literally and figuratively. But maybe we'll get that first class seat on British Airways and get a handcrafted drink there too. But join us. We'll continue to explore these inspiring journeys of industry innovators everywhere. And we've been talking about coffee. I definitely want to give a shout out and thank you to our sponsor today, White Cloud Coffee Roasters. Don't forget, you can enjoy 10% off your coffee order when you use the code CREATIVITY at checkout when you visit White Cloud Coffee. So thanks, Guy, and thanks to all our listeners for joining us. We'll see you next time, and we'll keep unlocking your world of creativity. Bye for now.